Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here, and welcome to a new series of vlog videos that are going to be basically just discussing news and previews and stuff like that about reboots and spin-offs and, reimaginings and all this other rehashing stuff. Basically it's about rehashes that happen in the cartoon world. If you know my channel, you'll know that that's kind of like my my enemy has always been like reboots, spin-offs, and shows that go on for too long. That's always kind of like been those are my hangups because those are all things that um, basically show that there's no creativity. And not all of those, not all reboots, not all spin-offs, not all that stuff is awful, but in general, a lot of it is. So I figure I'd just talk a little bit about it, especially because there's been a lot of news about this, especially on Nickelodeon's side. But Cartoon Network has its fair share, and we'll talk about that today. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking about two things. I'm going to talk about the first preview trailer that came out for the new Powerpuff Girls show, and I'm going to talk about the Nick crossover Nicktoon reboot movie that may or may not be happening. It still doesn't look like it's definitely happening, but I feel like I should talk about it regardless. Um, so first up, I want to talk about the Powerpuff Girls. Now, if you don't know, they announced this last year at their upfront, almost a year ago, and they showed us pretty much nothing. They showed us one screenshot of the three girls in midair, and that was all we got. And then they announced the voice actresses and actors, and that's it for the longest time. And then eventually we got a logo, and I'm not crazy about the logo, but all right. And then we got these teasers, which I think are kind of clever that Cartoon Network's been doing recently, where they have the new characters interacting with the other Cartoon Network shows in a really tangential way. We Bare Bears had the Bear Stack walk through the backgrounds of like Adventure Time and Steven Universe and Clarence and stuff like that. And the Powerpuff Girls here are flying through all these characters' shows, and the characters are like, "Oh, do you see that up there?" I don't know what character's Irish. Shout out to Cartoon Lover 98 there. No, yeah. So they had that, and that's like it's a great way to do a preview while still telling us literally nothing about the show because they didn't even show the girls. It was just their streaks of light through the air. Um, and now finally today we got an actual little clip of the show. It's not like a trailer. It's not anything that's like a montage of episodes. It looks like it is just one clip from an episode. It's like a minute long clip. And there's links down in the description. You can see the clip for yourself. I need to make things abundantly clear to everyone. I'm going to judge this preview. I am judging the preview as what it is. I'm not judging the show. I don't know the show. I don't there's no episode is out as the time of me making this. I can make assumptions and educated guesses, but nothing I can say is a final opinion on the show until the show comes out. And Cartoon Network has been known to advertise their shows in a rather misleading way, making Steven Universe look kind of dumb, making serious episodes of Adventure Time kind of look silly, that sort of thing. So if this was like a completely out of context clip, I wouldn't be entirely surprised. Although you have to remember that it is important. The previews that happen are no accident. The network and the people behind the show very carefully choose what they're going to show you, especially for this first showing. So it is important insofar as it was specifically chosen. It's not like they just throw a minute of just some random episode in there. No, this was chosen. Although I wouldn't be surprised if this was the first episode of the show. Before I get into that, I guess I should say my opinion on the logo that came out. There's also a link in the description. I talked about this a bit on Twitter, but what bugs me about the logo, first of all, they put it on yellow, like a really obnoxious yellow background, in like some promo stuff. And I don't know if that's like the default, like that's gonna appear in the title screen or whatever. But that yellow is like really gaudy. Does not look good. And then the Powerpuff Girls, it's pink and blue. It's Blossom and Bubbles' colors. And like the V is very small at the top, but it's Blossom and Bubbles' colors without Buttercup, and that drives me nuts. Because it's like why would you represent 2/3 of your team on there? But poor Buttercup always gets the raw end of the deal. Blossom and Bubbles got names that kind of represent their personalities, and Buttercup was like, well, we need another B name. So she got Buttercup. Uh, but yeah, like it's just a weird design choice. I could understand if it was just pink, like just Blossom, because Blossom's the leader. Fine, makes sense. I could understand if it was all three of them. Fine, makes sense. I could understand if they went with like a purple that's just kind of like neutral to the characters, or something. But yeah, the way they did it, it just didn't make any sense to me. Sorry, I gotta mute my phone here. Yeah. So yeah, and it's just the logo. It's not a huge deal, but it's just like terrible first impressions right off the bat with this show. Um, okay, so on to the preview itself. There are three things that I kind of noticed about this and took issue with it, and I didn't like the preview overall. The first thing is the animation style, the art style, and the animation itself. The art style, people are comparing it to Clarence, and it does look a lot like Clarence. It is that typical 2016 now, I guess, 2010s style of just, the colors are all like what you'd expect from the colors. They're obviously they're digitally inked, but they're all like the same color. Looks kind of the same color palette as Clarence. Um, there's nothing particularly stylized or interesting about it. It's just kind of like if you were to choose a default animation and art style for 2016, it would look like this. Like it's just default, which it's not the worst thing in the world, but doesn't impress me in any way. And the animation itself, the motion didn't seem particularly fluid. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but like Buttercup throws this guy around and it doesn't look particularly good. I don't know, just the perspective shots. It's hard to really describe this without showing, but and I'm no expert on the art styling, so. But yeah, that didn't impress me. Then there's Buttercup's voice, and you know I guess there's really no winning with this one, and I'm gonna totally admit that this is something that when the show happens, when the full show happens, maybe I'll get used to it. Maybe it'll just become more natural. Maybe it's just because this is the first time I'm hearing it, but it doesn't sound right. It sounds like someone's trying to do an impression of Buttercup, and that's about it. And I mean no offense to the actresses or anything like that. A lot of people try to come to the defense of this and saying, "Well, Pie Guy, you can't be mad that they chose new actors. Isn't it great that these three new up and comers got jobs?" Like, I don't mean to sound rude here, but quite honestly, I don't care who gets a job or who doesn't get a job in Hollywood. The point is to make the best product that can be made. I mean, the point is to make money, but from a creative standpoint, the point is to create the best thing out there that the most fans will love and everything is great. And for recasting characters, they didn't do it. Cartoon Network didn't do it because they really felt like these girls deserve jobs or anything like that. Like, it's great that they have jobs, that's great, but like, so would adding a million extra characters to Steven Universe would add more voice acting jobs, but that'd be a terrible creative decision. That doesn't, just because it makes more jobs for people doesn't make the show any better or worse, or justify the creative decision in any way. So I mean no disrespect to the actress there, but because I guarantee you it's Cartoon Network's direction. It honestly, I probably would have been happier if it was just like a totally different sounding voice. Like they didn't try to make it sound like the old Buttercup at all. It was just its own thing. But right now, it sounds kind of like it's halfway stuck between actual Buttercup and like knock it off style Buttercup, fake Buttercup. Um, yeah. So and again, you know what? To be fair, not like totally awful, but it doesn't sound right. And then the biggest problem I had with it is the story of the clip, and what looks like the story of the episode is that there is Manly Mannington, the manly man with his manly beard and lumberjack, and he has a giant wooden thing next to him for symbolism. Um, and the whole shtick is like, little girls, oh, you're just a little princess. It's very on the nose, and I get it. It's a preview, so like, if you want to sell the concept of the show, this right here is it. It's little girls beat the tar out of everything. Everything that looks really tough in the world. But if this is like what the episode is, and again, this is making an assumption, and I fully admit it's an assumption. If that's what the episode is, It's too on the nose. The only time I think in the first like 3 seasons that the show ever really did like something that kind of like straightforward was with the Rowdy Rough Boys, because there wasn't really any enemies that were like, Manly Mannington. You had weird effeminate devil guy. You had country redneck. You had super intelligent monkey with a speech impediment. You had the overly feminine villain for one episode, but there wasn't really anything like that. And yeah, they would go on to make a really terrible episode called Members Only, which is exactly this. It's literally these superheroes being like, "You can't be superheroes. You're a girl." Nyeh, 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 nyeh. And that was a terrible episode. But anyway, I just it felt like it was super on the nose. So I guess in the grand scheme of things, it could totally have been a worse preview. But nothing about this impresses me. Nothing about this sells me. Nothing about this says this is anything but a cynical cash grab, right? And this is kind of something I want to move into here, is that it might sound like I'm being harsh on reboots and stuff like that, and that's because I am. But I think it's warranted, because these networks make these things with the implication that they already have a fan base. Right? They make them because they know people will watch it. They know, regardless of whether they make it good or bad, people are going to watch it. They might not continue to watch it, but people will watch it. I'm going to turn in. You're probably going to turn in. We're going to watch it, and the network knows it. The network knows they have brand recognition. And it bugs me when they know that and they use that and they don't care about the show. And from what I've seen about this Powerpuff Girls show, before we saw any clips, before this clip dropped, Cartoon Network was doing all sorts of promoting of like a luncheon they had with the Powerpuff Girls, and they had Powerpuff Girls merchandise at this famous fashion show, and it's like they're doing all these things, and nobody knows if the show is going to be good or bad, and yet they're already trying to sell you stuff, and that's the frustration, right? Because if you're going to bring something back, just do it right, or else you're just abusing the goodwill the fans have. You are just taking that positive energy fans have for the franchise and turning it into just something you can use for pure corporate greed. And if the show turns out to be bad, which I think it will, I think it might, no guarantees, I don't know, but I think it probably will, then it is just a case of a company wanting money and saying, well, people like Powerpuff Girls back in the day. There's been like a whole movement online to get more women in television and on media and stuff like that. So, we can bring the Powerpuff Girls in, then we'll get the whole people who want more of that. We'll get the whole people who used to like the show. We'll change it a little bit, market it, make it great for today's kids, and do that. And it's just very cynical. It's like, I might be being cynical about this, but it's only because in a lot of cases with these reboots, networks and companies are cynical about it too, and that's unfortunate. I really think, and I think that I no longer have really much leniency for these reboots, because I for original ideas I have leniency, right? I am willing to let it have time to grow and to say, all right, maybe that wasn't so great, but you know what, maybe it'll get better. I have more leniency for that, and I'm not going to have that for reboots anymore. I'm not going to, because the network assumes you'll already have goodwill going into it, so instead I'm just going to automatically be very critical of it. Not necessarily negative, but I'm going to be critical of it, and I'm not really going to pull any punches, because, yeah, I made my spiel about how it's, a lot of times networks it's a marketing device. It's like, it's not a show to them. It's not about the quality of the show. It's about how much they can sell and stuff. And again, businesses, companies are businesses. Businesses are companies. There's a totally nebulous statement. You know what I mean? These networks are companies, and the goal is to make money. And of course, they have to make money. It's a job, and these shows aren't cheap. I understand that. I'm not upset with them making money. I'm upset with them making money without actually putting any effort into the show, and without bringing these shows back just because they know it'll be financially successful, without caring at all about what the actual product they're selling is. It's kind of like a con in a way. And with that, let me move on to Nickelodeon and the whole Nicktoon reboot movie thing. So there's been a lot of things thrown around, like, oh, Nickelodeon's gonna reboot Hey Arnold. Nickelodeon's gonna reboot As Told by Ginger. A Rugrats reboot may be coming back. They might just do the Hey Arnold Jungle movie. There's been a lot of really nebulous, like, Nickelodeon saying we're thinking about X, and that's why I kind of waited to talk about this. I talk a little bit about this stuff in another video that I did with Phoenix Pen over on her channel, so click the link if you haven't seen that yet. But yeah, but I kind of want to talk about it a little bit on my own channel here. The reason why I took so long is because I don't know if any of this stuff is happening. I don't really want to make like a whole video about something that is probably just a rumor, or probably just Nickelodeon putting their feelers out to see if anyone would care. You know, not necessarily that they'd even want to do it, they just kind of want the analytics. But there's been a lot of buzz about this Nicktoons movie, and I don't know, I'm still not entirely sure. I go back and forth on whether I think this is really going to happen or not, but I figure it's been in talks for a while, and a lot of people have given their feedback, an opinion on it, so I figure I might as well go ahead. I'm a little... See, I'm torn on it because my inner child, if you were to give me this news like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would be thrilled. I'd be like, oh man, a big crossover, and they're gonna do something crazy, and I've always wanted to see, I don't know, Invader Zim interact with, like, Tommy Pickles or something. Probably not that. That would probably go horribly for all parties. Fine, Invader Zim and Angelica team up. Although Zim is a 2000 Nicktoon, so, you know. I don't know how strict they are. I see, like, that's kind of the frustrating thing, is that, I don't know, to me, Nicktoons, like, the cutoff for classic Nicktoons is probably, like, 2003 or 4 or 5. You know, Zim is like a classic Nicktoon, even though it's not 90s. But anyway, so yeah, my inner kid is like, yeah, you know, this is a cool idea. You could do so many fun things with this. You could make so many jokes about how similar or different these characters are, and contrast, you know, how they look and everything. But now that I'm older, and now that I've seen things like Transformers, and I've seen Transformers. I haven't seen Alvin and the Chipmunks or the Smurfs or Yogi Bear, but I've heard of them. I've heard enough about them. All those movies like that, and how, especially in the case of like Alvin and the Chipmunks and the Smurfs, and it feels like the people behind the movies just don't care. You know, they just want your money. They don't really care, and you know, Transformers too, to an extent. Knowing that there's that out there in Hollywood right now, and that Nickelodeon is the way it currently is, it crosses the mind that Nickelodeon would try to basically pull a Smurfs and be like, alright, well, the story is the Nicktoon characters all find a portal to the real world, and they meet up with some celebrity. Who's hot right now? Chris Pratt? Yeah, sure. You know, they find Chris Pratt, and Chris Pratt is having some, like, weird, inappropriate problem that has nothing to do with Nicktoons, like, you know, the guy's father is dying of terminal cancer, and the Nicktoons all come, and they bring joy back into his life, and, you know, and then he sends them back through the portal. Like, that's like, tell me that's not something that they could do. They could do that, and it would be terrible, and people would see it, and it'd make a lot of money. So yeah, so my concern is just that, my big thing is just that I think there is a lot of potential there story-wise, but I also don't think Nickelodeon would tap into it. I don't think they care enough, and it's tricky when you do this sort of thing, because what would be the audience in that case? Now, I heard the guy that was kind of in charge of, like, their Reboot 90s Nick stuff. I heard him talk a little bit about, in an interview, I'll also link this interview, I heard him talk a little bit about how, like, they try to make these reboots compatible with today's children, because those are always going to be the market. That's always going to be who they're aiming for. If they can get older people, great, but, you know, it's always going to be about the kids. Which is fine. That's totally fair. But in this case, in a movie like this, they could go for the older audience. They might. But then there's the trouble. How do you do that? Nobody wants to see, like, you know, Nicktoons swearing or anything. That'd just be weird. You know, it'd be weird if they tried to force it to be more adult. But at the same time, if they made it really childish, adults wouldn't want to see it. So it's like this weird balance that I think they could strike. They could strike a nice middle area where, you know, it's appropriate for all ages, but it's also not an immature movie. But But again, that takes a lot of effort and a lot of planning and a lot of working, and it might just be that, well, it's cheaper and easier to just make lowest common denominator garbage, and people are going to turn out to see it because it's an interesting idea. And that's that cynicism that they could be exhibiting here. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think this is a good or bad idea? I think I'm gonna go with, I think it's a good idea, but I think in all likelihood it's going to be executed terribly, or this isn't going to happen. There is also a part of me that's like, yeah, this probably isn't going to happen, this big Nicktoons crossover idea. So yeah, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments about that and the Powerpuff Girls. Let me know if you want to see more of this, where I talk about like current reboot and spin-off and that kind of stuff and news. Yeah, Pie Guy Rules.